I think the thing that makes this movie so good, the one thing that might make watching this movie worth it, even if you have zero interest in the subject of the film. This is one of the most. So I watched this movie called The Stranger on Netflix a couple of nights ago, and I've been thinking about it ever since it ended. I'm a pretty big fan of Joel Edgerton. I've seen a few of his movies. Most recently, I watched a movie he made called The Gift, which was just very uncomfortable. Kind of one of those movies that really messes with your brain, but after it's over, you're still thinking about it. Joel Edgerton is in this movie. He produced it. And I gotta be honest, I'm still thinking about it even a couple days after I've seen it. Basically, this film follows an undercover cop named Mark who is tasked with attempting to befriend a man named Henry, who is believed to be the prime suspect of one of the biggest high-profile kidnapping cases in the history of Australia. And it's been 8 years. The trail has gone completely cold until they track this guy down and they task Joel Edgerton's character with trying to get him to confess, because aside from a literal confession, they don't have any actual evidence that they could bring against him. That premise on its own was enough to interest me in this film, because it just sounds like one of these movies that's really going to make you think and you're really going to have to pay attention. And you are. All of that is 100% true. In fact, not only are you going to have to pay very close attention to what's happening in this film, turn on the subtitle. I love Australia. I love Australian accents. I had a few times in this movie where I had no idea what they were saying. So I highly recommend, if you do check this movie out, turn on the subtitles immediately. Now, that being said, the performances in this film from Joel Edgerton and Sean Harris are incredible. The chemistry between these two is so good. This movie is all about a man who is tasked with befriending someone who is believed to be one of the worst people in the entire continent. And Mark has a kid, so he is basically forced to attempt to become best friends with someone who's accused of doing something that he could never ever want to imagine happening to his own child. This movie is full of twists and turns. There are so many things about it that make it so enjoyable to watch, but I think the thing that makes this movie so good, the one thing that might make watching this movie worth it, even if you have zero interest in the subject of the film. This is one of the most beautiful movies I have ever seen in my life. This is one of the most beautifully shot, beautifully directed films that I have seen all year. I say this a lot, right? The best part of cinematography are seeing those shots that could be paintings. This whole movie could be a painting. I was rewinding, I was pausing certain frames. There is a frame in this film of a car being set on fire and one of the characters standing just off to the side. It just looks so good. Shouts out to the director of this film, Tom Wright, and the cinematographer, Sam Chiplin. They did such an amazing job on this film, making it not only one of the most compelling stories of the year, but this is one of the most, if not the most beautiful film that I think I have seen this entire year. Now, I did want to say that while this movie is not in the horror genre, this is a crime thriller film, but in horror movies, sometimes the thing that's the scariest is the thing that you imagine might happen. And this film is full of that feeling. There are so many moments where the anticipation and the feeling of what might happen, what could happen, is so uncomfortable. It makes you so anxious in the best way possible. It's what really made this movie work for me. I think that sort of storytelling is an incredibly well-made choice. I think that it worked really well, because in my mind, the stuff that I was thinking might happen in this film is terrifying. I don't want to give away what happens, but the fact that they play on you thinking you know where it's headed, it is done in such a smart way that it adds so much to making this film as good as it is. And overall, I gotta say, this is just another banger of a movie from Netflix. It came out at the Cannes Film Festival. Netflix bought it. They're distributing it. It dropped on Netflix last week. I've heard almost next to nothing about it. I just found it on Netflix as I was scrolling, but it is totally worth watching. I do want to say it's really slow, and you could say it's really boring if you're someone that doesn't like slow burn movies. The movie that came to mind, honestly, was Zodiac, a movie that I loved. I thought Zodiac was amazing, but Zodiac is also very slow. I think this movie is not as slow as Zodiac, which clocked in at like 2.5 hours. This is substantially shorter than that. But it is worth noting that if you're someone who's going into this thinking that this is going to be Mission Impossible or James Bond, is going to be a crazy shootout or a bunch of fighting, you got to drop all of that stuff. That's not what this movie is trying to be. It is a procedural crime drama thriller, and it absolutely nails every aspect of doing that. The Stranger is yet another sleeper hit on Netflix. I highly recommend it if you are into this genre, if you are into either of these actors, if you are into seeing one of the most beautifully shot films of the year. The Stranger should be one that you check out.